So you're a member of the LGBT community and you have creative abilities. You have money and you want to make more. You want to be an entrepreneur. Where do you go for information? Well, you meet our next guest, Lorenzo Thione, founder of StartOut.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you, David.
So how does one become an entrepreneur?
Well, you know, I kind of discovered my passion for it, I would say almost by mistake. I started my first company on the advice or exhortation of a couple of friends who became my mentors. And I really became passionate about entrepreneurship through that process. And I recognized the importance of mentorship and network and education. There were so many questions I had when I first started my first company that I felt after that chapter concluded that I wanted to figure out a way to do that for others and help others, and at the same time do that for the LGBT community, which has never had sort of a forum and a network that would help LGBT entrepreneur grow, start businesses and grow their businesses and be successful while being visible,
right,
which is probably the most important thing someone can do to really further the cause for equality and help defying stereotype. Is what better than creating great role models and visible.
And to be out.
Yeah, and to be out.
Now, what do you think is one of the most misunderstood parts of quote-unquote entrepreneurship? I had someone joke once, because I started my own business. They're like, oh, well, you started your own business because you're unemployed. I'm like, no, I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, what do people misunderstand about being an entrepreneur?
Well, I think, the most important trait of an entrepreneur is you have to be crazy enough to have an idea you really believe in and very few other people believe in. Because if many other people believe in that same idea, of course there would be many people doing it. You'd be probably better off just joining someone else doing it. And you have to be, it's that kind of strange formula of being a visionary and a crazy person, and be really, really passionate.
So a lot of left and right blame.
Yeah, well,
thrown in there.
Truly, some people, and my background and my current sort of endeavors are a little, various. But people ask me, because I work in technology, I worked in technology, I work in entertainment, and they ask me how can I do that, and how is it that that you can mesh the creative and the business. Is like, there is no job that is more creative than being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur means to create something by definition. You are creative. You're creating something never existed before.
Now, StartOut.org is a service organization that helps other LGBT.
It's a 501c3. It's a nonprofit.
So that's to help other gay entrepreneurs. But you yourself have started several businesses, and one of them is fairly new, and it's called Artify.
It's Artify It and Artify It.
Artify It.
And we use the Italian domain, which I'm Italian by birth, and we use the Italian domain to kind of make the pun on it. It's artify.it, Artify It. Yeah, it's actually a really interesting idea. What would you say if I told you, I could put you in the same shoes of a multi-million-dollar collector of contemporary art, and have the ability to rotate art every once so often, whenever you want, have beautiful original contemporary art for $50 a month.
Right.
We are basically using the collaborative consumption, shared consumption model that has seen so many companies being successful, like Airbnb and Netflix and Zipcar and whatnot, to bring art at the reach of everyone.
Well, and it not only does something for the people who are sharing the art, quote unquote, not owning the art, I guess you should say renting the art.
Yeah, I mean, you could say renting, although the biggest difference between renting in a traditional sense is that you're making some kind of commitment to one piece for a certain amount of time, and you're deciding to rent that piece. And we don't look at it like that. You're actually subscribing to the collection, and you all of a sudden are in the same position as this person that has $3 million worth of art in their storage.
Which is kind of nice. It brings it more down to the common level, because I remember the first piece of art that I bought, I was scared to death, because I was scared to death to say, I like that, because I thought someone else might say, God, you have horrible taste.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter. To me, and that's how the idea came about, art is something very personal. And I've always loved art, and I've never really considered being a collector, because there is so much subtext that comes into buying a piece of art when it comes to thinking about it as an investment or whether other people will like it. And it's really about what it says to you and whether or not it speaks to you. So we eliminate all the risk. And we make it really easy and risk-free.
Yeah, now Artify may be about eliminating risk, but the other thing that I know you're involved in is a very risky business, and that's being a Broadway producer.
Well, every startup is a risky business. You know, we eliminate risk for the consumers, not necessarily for ourselves.
Yeah, but talk to us about the show that you are one of the producers of.
I am the co-creator, co-writer, and executive producer for a new Broadway-bound musical, which is called Allegiance, and features as stars Star Trek's Sulu, George Takei.
George Takei, yep, there you go.
And the amazing, incomparable Lea Salonga, who was the original Miss Saigon and won a Tony Award for Miss Saigon, and then went on to be both Fantine and Eponine in various productions of Les Mis.
And the music, of course, is by
Jay Kuo,
Jay Kuo,
a composer
who many people remember from
Insignificant Others
here in San Francisco.
Yeah. So he and I have been friends for a very, very long time, and the story of how the show came about is really interesting. We met George Takei one evening randomly in a theater, and he inspired us to tell the story that is a very personal story to him of the internment of Japanese Americans in the United States following the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Because George at least spent part of his life, as I recall, as a 9 or 10-year-old boy.
He was a four-year-old boy
when
he and his
Japanese
family.
internment camp.
He and his family, just 2 months after he had turned 4, were taken from their home in California, in Los Angeles, and brought into an internment camp in Arkansas, and then moved to another camp in Northern California until they were finally released at the end of the war.
Wow.
Yeah.
What has been the response to Allegiance?
It's been quite amazing. I mean, this is not a, it's something you do with a long-term vision on it. We've been working on it for about 4.5 years, and we're just about to the point where the show is going to go to Broadway. But we had our world premiere in San Diego at the historic Old Globe Theater this past summer. And the show broke all box office records in theater's history, as well as the audience approval rate was the highest the theater had ever received for any show before.
Right. Now, of all the businesses that you've started and the ones that you've advised people to start, has doing a musical been the most scary for you?
No, they are all equally scary. They really are.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly, to some extent, theater even gets a bad rep. But startups are just as risky, and you have to believe in what you do, and you have to build a team of people that really believes in what you do. And then my other theory is you have to be doing something different, and you have to be able to break the mold and disrupt. And I think that's actually the edge of coming from outside of the theater world and coming from the technology world.
You've brought some of that tech and business savvy to it.
This show, Allegiance, going into Broadway, has an audience base, a fan base on Facebook and social media of almost 300,000 people.
Well, and of course, you've got one of Facebook's most popular people, George Takei.
Commands a 3.3 million fans, social media base.
In our last few seconds, we know StartOut.org, Artify.it. Where do we go to learn more about Allegiance?
AllegianceMusical.com.
Thanks so much, Lorenzo.
Thank you, David.
We've been learning about gay entrepreneurship and the Broadway stage, and well, next up, just two really boring ladies, Steph and Lauren, the hosts of Lady Brain. We'll be right back.